Okay, so we're about to go solo caving here on a beautiful evening in the Mendips. It's very green, very beautiful, actually not raining, and you can hopefully hear the birds in the background. It's a beautiful evening. The reason I don't post the names of the mines and the caves in my videos that I go and explore the locations of these places is just purely because I don't really want to advertise or promote it if you're not experienced enough to go and deal with them. If you do want to go and have a shot at caving or mine exploring or any of these adventures, go and seek out a qualified guide to take you down and show you the ropes. In terms of what I bring with me solo caving, I have my trusty caving bag. Inside I actually put a diving bag because it's waterproof and it just keeps everything clean, which is useful in a cave. I have some survival medical type things. This was a recommendation of a friend of mine a few years ago who is actually in mountain rescue, and she told me about the severity of bleeds if you were to cut your leg or cut your arm open. Ever since those harrowing stories, I take this with me everywhere. I also have a load of torches. You'll also see, perhaps unusually, I have a torch around my neck. This was taught to me actually by a guide a few years ago. And he said that actually if you're in a tunnel and you're in a confined space and you can't necessarily get your hand to reach your pockets or your bag, and this primary headlight goes out, all of a sudden you're in really serious trouble. A cave is a zero light environment, you're in big trouble. So having one around your neck gives you that redundancy so that if this were to fail in the worst possible spot in that cave, all I have to do is turn this one on and I'm back and good again, and that's fine. So I have loads of other torches with me, including the amazing big flashlight as well, some slings and carabiners, things like that, and then, as I said, some trusty Haribo, which comes with me as I justify it because I say, well, it's an emergency only food and I totally wouldn't be sitting in the cave eating Haribo as an excuse. I also have a spare jumper, things like that, and water, which you can't see because my camera is sat on it. So let's go and explore this cave, and I had a few questions from people as well on caving generally, so I'll try and answer those questions inside the cave as well. But let's go solo caving and go and explore what we can find. And the first thing I want to point out really is that caves for the most part tend to be kind of self-policing in terms of access. The reason for that is down there, I can't quite point because I'm trying to hold too many devices. That hole down there is what we have to slide down to get into this cave. So it is quite intimidating for someone who wasn't a caver. So in terms of access, a lot of our caves here in the UK are open. Often you'll know if they're open and available, I suppose, to use, because they'll have a sign on it which will say sort of here, Mendip Cave Rescue, dial 999, which is our emergency services line, ask for the police, and then they'll put you through to Cave Rescue. Again, if you're going caving, please make sure you go with a guide or an instructor. Don't try and do it by yourself for the first time. Go and learn the skills that you need to do it. It's a great hobby, but it isn't the safest thing to do. In terms of access, so mines and caves, they can be on private property and there can be the issue of trespass. It depends from site to site. This particular cave is open. Some caves will be gated and you'll need to be a member of, say, a caving club to be able to access them, to get the key, same for some mines. So it really depends site to site. So as I said, we're going to slide down this hole. It's not always the easiest thing to do when you haven't got two hands, so we'll see how we get on. Okay, so before we kind of go further into the cave, I just want to tell you a little bit about its history. So the earliest actually written record of anyone sort of writing about this cave was actually in 1736. And then it was explored again in sort of the early 1800s. However, it wasn't until the sort of early 19th century, around 1900, that lead miners explored this cave, I suspect, trying to see if there was any mining potential in it. And actually they have found in this cave, I can't remember quite the date, I think it was like the 1920s or somewhere around there. There's a record that says that they found bones of mammoths and I think a cave lion in here as well, which is pretty interesting. So one of the questions someone had was about temperature. So caves, in case you don't know, they are pretty stable environments. They will have pretty much the same temperature year round, day and night. So this cave is probably around 10 degrees centigrade. It will pretty much stay like that. So whether it's icy outside or a heat wave, it will be roughly 10 degrees. So it's pretty consistent the whole time. Someone said, oh, as you go down deeper, does it get warmer? I think you have to go quite a lot deeper for that to happen. It certainly doesn't happen in the UK. I think there are caves in Mexico where there are big crystals that are formed that are very hot, but I'm not entirely sure what depth those would be, but nothing that we see kind of here and in Europe generally.
So it's probably hard for you to get a picture of scale, but you have to squeeze horizontally through here now.
What's funny is the gimbal on this pocket camera is finding it really difficult to get the angles of things quite right. This is where it's quite challenging. Caving with a bag, a pocket, and a load of torches. I don't know if you can see them on the camera, but there's tons of like fossils in this rock. Okay, I'm going to attempt to do this crawl whilst holding the gimbal. And moving a torch in front of me. This is not textbook caving. This is making it substantially harder than it has to be. Hopefully this is absolutely award-winning, like, footage. Okay. So, crawls can be quite challenging and they end up being really physical because you have to use very small muscles to move as opposed to usually you'd use big muscles to move. So they end up being things that, as you can hear in my breath, get you quite out of breath. So while we take a little break, I thought I'd answer one other question that was asked, which was, how do you deal with the risk when you're caving? Because obviously this is an environment that's zero light, but it's also understandably zero mobile signal. You don't have the ability to call someone and say, hey, I've broken my leg. Like, that's not going to happen. So how do you deal with it? Well, the best practice really in caving is that you'd have a call out person. So someone who I would tell, usually two people actually, who I would say to, you know, hey, I'm going to this cave at this time. If you don't hear from me by whatever time I say, call 999, ask for cave rescue, tell them I'm experienced, etc. Now, obviously, if you go into a cave at, say, 4 o'clock and you tell your call out person that you're going to be out at 8 and you have an accident within 10, 15, 20 minutes of being in that cave, you could have 3 hours plus in that situation before anyone even knew there was something wrong. So this is why I bring a survival blanket, I bring food, bring water, bring extra layers. The biggest problem you have in caving is usually that you're going to get really cold. You also have, when you look at the accident reports in caves, so this cave actually has had a couple of accidents. Firstly, the main things are kind of sprains, broken ankles, etc., hypothermia, and also just people getting lost, people getting tired. One thing you've got to understand with caving is when you go into a cave, you're going downhill. And then when you start to feel tired and you decide to turn around, actually the whole rest of that caving trip is now uphill. And people often, it seems like a silly thing to forget, but that's what they forget. So it actually becomes more physical on the way out. So you have to save quite a lot of energy for that. So one of the things that most people wanted to hear about was caving deaths and caving accidents and the grim side of it. This cave has had some accidents. It's had people who've had to have cave rescue come and drill them out of holes that they've got stuck in, and all sorts of things like that. Okay, I've had to temporarily switch to the iPhone because this bit is a little bit sketchy and it's just easier to hold the iPhone than the very delicate gimbal. This is a bit delicate because, as you can see, it's very vertical and I've got to slide incredibly carefully
down there.
So I don't know how much of this you're going to be able to see. I'm really glad I didn't bring the gimbal down here, because I think I probably would have destroyed that device. So I'm sliding down this. Basically what you can't really see is I'm sort of bracing my legs against this and my back against this, and it's kind of keeping me from plummeting all the way down to the floor.
So you can see the way I'm stopping myself from falling all the way down quite a long way is this knee is braced into this rock, and then my back is pressed against this. You really do not want to fall here. So we've got to climb all the way up here, and you can see that light. That's where I left the torch and the pocket.
So because caves are zero light environments and offer quite a unique sensory experience, astronauts actually often train in caves on Earth because it's one of the only places where you can actually get that zero light environment simulation. So maybe I've got the makings of an astronaut. So lots of people have said solo caving, why? I find it really peaceful, actually. I really enjoy it. In terms of safety, the risks that the cave poses don't really change. The consequence of one of those manifesting probably do, because you're by yourself. That being said, I do actually find that I'm more cautious. I take more backups of everything, redundancy of everything, like lights and things like that. I'm definitely more cautious with what I take on, whereas if I'm with other people, perhaps I would be a little bit more laissez-faire in what risks I took on. So in some regards, I'm probably safer. Obviously, if anything did happen, I'd be down here by myself, so there would be less opportunity for someone to help me out, for example. That would obviously be worse, but it's not a recommended thing. I'd say it's definitely something only very experienced cavers do, and even then, most of the cavers I know don't. I go to caves that are sort of well within my limit of capability and strength and fitness. So I would never say I was sort of pushing myself massively when I solo cave. I don't want to get too close or get my light too much on it, so I'll try and zoom in the edits. Hopefully you'll get this. I'm quite far away and I don't want to get any closer or get too much light on him, but a little bat.